What's up, everybody? You are back in here with the Pro Football Pod. You've got Hulk and Coach hanging out with you today. We're excited to dive into week 3, week 2. Some great matchups, some, kind of chalk type of stuff. But hey, fantasy purposes, we were told in the chat before, I just want to shout this out, that Alvin Kamara was washed.
Yeah. Oh, so washed.
Alvin Kamara was washed.
What was it, 4 touchdowns?
Four touchdowns later with a big middle finger to you. But hey, hit that subscribe button down below. 500 subscribers. We're going to give away a free jersey to one of you lucky viewers. And every 500 subscriber benchmark, we're going to keep doing that for you guys. We love you. We appreciate you. We're glad you're hanging out with us today. We're going to go ahead and dive into the primetime matchups that we have for you this week in week 3. Starting it off with the Thursday night football matchup. We have the New England Patriots going into the Meadowlands to face the New York Jets. Jets right now -6.5 on the spread. Let's go ahead and what are we looking at here for, fantasy purposes? Let's get into that part first.
So there's so many players in this matchup that you're like absolutely going to start, like Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson. Honestly, Aaron Rodgers isn't like an auto start. He only had 167 in the yards in the first week against San Fran, and even this week he didn't like blow you away. Garrett Wilson, I feel like it's time spent. Like, it's the law of averages. He hasn't really popped off yet, but I'm excited about that if I own Garrett
Aaron's
Wilson.
already said multiple times, like, I need to get him more targets.
Exactly. And we know that he's going to pop off for a 20, 30-point game. What happened to Marvin Harrison in week 2, where week 1 he disappeared, and then all of a sudden he had 2 touchdowns and 115 yards in the first quarter? That's what Garrett Wilson's capable of.
Now, if he's got Christian Gonzalez shadowing him this game, then that may be a little rough riding for him there, because Christian Gonzalez is legit.
Yeah. And that leads me to Allen Lazard. I think that the Patriots' defense isn't enough to basically be able to stop multiple threats. Mike Williams has been a non-factor in this offense. I think Allen Lazard could be a sneaky wide receiver 3, maybe like deep flex if you have 4 potential receivers playing on your team. I think that he would be somebody that's worth looking at. He has a really good rapport with Aaron at this point. We've seen it over and over and over again. So I think that he's scary to put in. I get that, and he's very boomer bust. But that 6 reception,
more value than Mike Williams to me.
Exactly.
And then on the Patriots side, I mean, you're gonna start Ramondre Stevenson.
Yes.
Hunter Henry came out and had 98 yards in the first half, 7 receptions in the first half for him as well. So Hunter Henry's a guy that you might want to look at and might want to keep your eye on, especially if you're tight end needy with somebody like Evan Ingram, who a hamstring injury just popped up in warm-ups on him, and he was just declared out, 30 minutes before the game?
I saw that you, like me, whenever that happened to you, picked up Colby Parkinson. Yep. I did the same thing in another league, and it did bite me. I wish I would have just picked up a Hunter Henry, but I think that Colby Parkinson was the smarter play with Puka being hurt.
Matt Stafford over Jacoby Brissett.
Exactly.
Which, in reality, maybe going with Hunter Henry and Jacoby would have been smarter because of the checkdowns, which is kind of what you saw. A lot of it is Hunter Henry just sitting in the window there for you. And I think versus the Jets, where you've got Sauce Gardner on the outside, and if DJ Reed's coming back this week on a short week, then the middle of the field's probably what you're going to want to work. So Hunter Henry might have some value for you again as well. Wide receiver wise for the Patriots, Jalen Polk, he started getting a lot more, action here in week 2, to where going forward you might be a little more encouraged, but I'm still not okay starting any of the Patriots wide receivers.
Exactly. He had 2 targets, one of them for maybe 4 targets, 2 receptions, 22 yards and a touchdown. That's not enough. I want to see 6 targets, a couple games in a row. Know that they're making this guy a mainstay of the offense. Marvin Harrison had 8 targets this week. That's what we're looking for to make a jump, that this is the guy. They want this guy to get the ball every play if they can. So I loved what we saw. I love that we got a touchdown, just like Lad McConkey getting a touchdown in the first week. But if you started him this week off of just that touchdown, you got like maybe 4 or 5 points. He had 3 or 4 targets on a running offense. Like that's not enough to
That's
start
where
these guys.
just like good food for thought for everyone, especially fantasy purposes. Unless the wide receiver you have is a first or highly touted second round wide receiver, and that's very borderline with the second round, I don't start them until at least like week 4 or 5. Like I need to start seeing target share. I need to see those targets starting to creep up. I want a good, a nice solid incline from you before I can trust it. Because like you said, Lad McConkey, he'll give you the great stat line in week 1. And it's like, oh, yep, here we go. They're featuring the rookie. And then a complete dud in week 2 because
Now,
he's still trying to work himself into the offense.
going to the Sunday night game with the Chiefs versus the Falcons, I think that this one is a lot of fantasy value. At the time of this recording, the Monday night game hasn't finished yet, so we don't know how the Falcons look in week 2, but based off of what they saw in week 1, we know that they're going to try to move the ball more in the pass game. I think Bijan Robinson, 18 carries for 68 yards, like that it obviously didn't work just feeding him the ball over and over and over again. He barely had 3 yards a carry, and then McLeod was their number 1 receiver. Like that can't happen. We need Drake London to step it up. If you're a Drake London owner, you absolutely need to start him. You can't draft a guy in the second round and then not start him week 2. That's how things like Marvin Harrison happen, where if he's on your bench in week 2, then you just gave up 30 points.
Yeah, I agree. And now, while Bijan is, a much better athlete than Zach Moss or Chase Brown, between the two guys, the Chiefs held them to 65 yards rushing.
Yeah.
So, like, that's where it goes to what you're saying is I don't know if the Falcons are going to be able to just try to pound it with Bijan. I think you're going to have to try to work, Drake London. I want to see some more Kyle Pitts action. Like you said, the Falcons game, we're recording this before the Falcons play on Monday Night Football, so we don't know exactly what week 2's looking like for them. It's just get your athletes the football. Like, I want to see the ball in Bijan's hands, not necessarily just running it. Give the guy 12 receptions if you have to. But my thing with the Falcons is Kirk Cousins looked to have zero mobility.
Yes.
And this isn't like, oh, well, Kirk Cousins wasn't really a scrambler before. No. But he is, at least in week 1, looked like a complete statue. Also, saw a stat to where if they lined up in the pistol, there was about a 90% chance they were running the ball. If they lined up in shotgun, there was a 100% chance they were passing the ball.
Yeah, that's not...
That can't be something to where average fans can figure that out. Yeah. Because as a Dolphins fan, we remember what those days were.
Yeah.
We knew if it was Hut 1, it was a run, and if it was Hut on 2, then it was a pass. Like, we knew that for the whole season. Thank you, Adam Gase.
Being one-dimensional like that just leads to the defense being able to do whatever they want with you, and the Chiefs have a very high-powered defense. I think that Kirk Cousins isn't really startable right now. Bijan, you have to start. Drake London, you have to start. Kyle Pitts, you have to start. Everyone else is still a question mark. Tyler Algier, I think, is very droppable based off of how much he got touches last week. I don't think that he's even really worth rostering currently.
Unless
even if
you're a Bijan owner.
Yeah, I mean, I guess kind of. But
I'm all about the handcuff. And I say that as somebody who had Christian McCaffrey and wasn't able to get Jordan Mason in any drafts that I got Christian McCaffrey just because somebody else snatched him up before me. Because obviously, as you've seen, that handcuff is valuable. My thing is Tyler Algier's value was with Arthur Smith. So
Agreed.
with this coaching staff, I do agree with you there. If you have a short bench or in a redraft league, if you can't afford the roster spot, Yeah, I'm absolutely not rostering him.
Now Isaiah Pacheco was questionable with an injury at the end of
He's
the
got an
Chiefs.
ankle injury. Yeah.
So we do want to closely monitor that this week. Obviously, if he practices fully on Friday, then he'll probably play. But if he's limited all week and then is limited again on Friday, I'd be looking for other options over Isaiah Pacheco. I love him. If he plays, I want to play him. But if he's limited and they play him, I'm still a little bit scared off from that. I really want to see a full practice on Friday just to show me that like this guy's ready to play football.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to get tweaked in the first quarter and then I'm out with a .8 points running back in my starting slot.
Yeah, it didn't look like it was too bad. Like he was able to come off the field on his own, kind of limped off a little bit. Kind of got twisted at one point, with the tackle, and that's when it looked like it happened. So I'm hoping he'll play. I think with having the extra day and having a longer week there for him, it's probably going to look good for him to play. Xavier Worthy kind of got locked up a little bit this week. Didn't really put up too much in week 2 here. Falcons, it's not like the Bengals have an elite defense. The Falcons defense, they do have some guys there. So I think it's worth noting that like going forward, I just mentioned, rookies, you've got to be able to see the consistency if you want to be able to start him each week, which, yeah, he's a great player. If you're playing in Madden, yeah, you're going to give him the ball 20 times. But my thing is even as an Xavier Worthy owner in 2 leagues, I don't know if I'm starting him this week, which that's one to where you bench him, he's going to go for 30 points.
And that's what sucks, but you have to play the actual targets. He's being targeted, I think he was targeted 4 times in week 1 and he had 2 touchdowns, including his carry. He had 4 total touches without Hollywood Brown being on the field. Like Rashee Rice and Kelsey are obviously the most targeted people on this offense. I really don't want to gamble on an
now,
Xavier
Hollywood
Worthy.
just hit IR, so he's out at least the next 3 games as well.
Exactly. Which I think if this week we see at least 5 touches from Xavier Worthy, and then maybe the week after we see 6, then I'm starting him. Like even when Hollywood comes back, like Hollywood's going to come back slow. Chiefs aren't necessarily going to need him. They did pull out the win in week 2, so they're 2-0. So I think that not starting him is the easier, safer call.
Rashee Rice didn't start getting his work until the last 7 weeks of the season either. So
Yes.
Now we have 2 Monday night games this week. They're gifting us here on September 23rd. We've got 2 Monday night games. So the first one we've got is the Jacksonville Jaguars going into Buffalo.
Yes. And Buffalo's got a 64.8% matchup predictor for the win percentage on this
Nice.
one. And we all know why. I mean, Josh Allen's still healthy. The hand obviously didn't bother him that much on Thursday. I mean, he didn't throw the ball too often, but James Cook totally took over the game. The Dolphins' run defense wasn't very good at stopping him, I mean, at all. So
Nope.
I think we see a similar thing. Jacksonville has a very porous run defense as well. The Dolphins in week 1 kind of took over against them. And then, yeah, I think that this past week they gave up a decent amount on the ground as well in week 2.
Yeah, this game for me is kind of Buffalo should absolutely win this game. Jacksonville just these first 2 weeks just has not looked good at all. Now the Cleveland Browns do have a legit defense. Like their defense is fabulous, fantastic.
Yes. One of the best.
The best. But looking at it, I mean, Trevor Lawrence, like 14 of 30, 220 yards, 0 touchdowns. Like you didn't turn the ball over, but okay. Like Travis Etienne, only 52 yards on the ground. Trevor Lawrence gave you some yards. Dearness Johnson, like it's just outside of Brian Thomas Jr., they're not giving you really anything. Like Christian Kirk is just basically invisible these first 2 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so are you not starting him though? Like him and ETN, I feel like you kind of still have to kind of buy in. Like you drafted him high enough that there's no way there's someone on your bench that's totally blowing up. Like if I had maybe Rashid Shaheed from the Saints, with how good the Saints offense looks, and with him having two pretty big games in weeks 1 and 2, even though they're on a low target count, I might start him over a Christian Kirk. But it's going to be really hard to find something on your roster that's like that. Keon Coleman, luckily, you didn't have to spend too high of a pick on. You can still wait on. Khalil Shakir is the same way. But for the Jags, man, I feel like you kind of have to start Christian Kirk. You have to start Evan Ingram if he's healthy. You have to start
Well,
ETN.
that's where I was going to say I'm starting Christian Kirk this week if Evan Ingram is out and he's not playing this week.
If he's
Like
not
if they're
playing.
able yeah, if they're able to go through a whole week of practice game planning for Evan Ingram to be out, then that makes me believe that Christian Kirk might get worked into the game plan a little more.
Okay.
So that's where I'm hoping I'll give it the one more week if Evan Ingram's out. I'm going to be honest, if Evan Ingram's fine and he's playing this next week, I don't know if I'm starting Christian Kirk. I think I might give him a week on my bench and just see what happens, or let it be, all right, I'm just going to wait until I see your numbers starting to come up here. Because for me, it's shocking. Like the last 2 seasons with Trevor Lawrence, he's been kind of like one of his go-to guys.
Yes.
And this last week, he got 3 targets, 1 reception for -1 yards.
Yeah. He honestly the biggest
Like Gabe
person in
Davis
this
got
offense
seven targets.
is Brian Thomas Jr. Brian Thomas Jr. is like the only person that really has showed up in both of the games that they
Or
played.
just have any value, yeah.
Yeah, I would honestly, if I'm in need of a wide receiver 3 or like a deep flex, I would probably start Brian Thomas. I think of all the rookies we've seen, what he was able to do against Jalen Ramsey week 1, and then also barely doing it, but pulling out that big play that he did in week 2, I think that he's worth a potential look. Like of all the young rookies that weren't taken in the first, like Malik Neighbors,
Mhm.
Marvin Harrison, you're kind of forced to start because of where you drafted him. But like I think
Yeah.
Brian Thomas, Keon Coleman, these guys you weren't necessarily forced to start them. I think I might start Brian Thomas.
I started him this week.
Nice.
I mean, he only gave me 11 points, but I started him this
That's
week.
super solid.
If you throw in a touchdown, like 2 receptions, 94 yards, so one of them his longest of 66, like you throw in a touchdown, you're looking good there. On the Bills side, I mean, like you said, you mentioned Josh Allen, you mentioned James Cook, Dalton Kincaid. I was banging the table for him all off season. I'm waiting on him to show up still. Keon Coleman, like you said, was just disappeared. I think Khalil Shakir is worth starting in the flex
Okay.
in deep leagues.
Okay.
Like I think he's starting to get enough work, and he's the only receiver on the depth chart that has ever caught a pass from Josh Allen before this season.
True. Very true.
So I do like Khalil Shakir there. Let's go into the next one for him. We've got the Commanders going into Cincinnati. Cincinnati's coming off a heartbreaker. Commanders are coming off a little high there. They were able to pull that out at the end versus the Giants. So, we got a little opposite ends of the spectrum. The Bengals are out for blood. Primetime at their house.
We saw
I think the Bengals should dominate.
Jaden Daniels was the number one passing, obviously, for the Washington in week 1, but he was also the number 1 rushing. That changed a little bit this past week. Brian Robinson finally kind of turned it on a little bit. He got a bunch of carries. He did decent in yards. We only saw 48 yards, but 220 passing from Jaden Daniels. Terry McLaurin. That's really what I want to discuss with this team. Is he? We've already seen so many like dud seasons from him. Is he
Hmm.
enough that it's worth punting on him now and trying to find options? You're not going to drop him, but like
No.
maybe drop like a Deontay Johnson or a Josh Palmer and pick up somebody that's got a little bit more risk to them.
So
And
you know how I said I started Brian Thomas Jr.?
yeah,
I started him over Terry McLaurin.
okay. So like
Like
that,
that's how I feel about Terry McLaurin right now. And it's
I
one of
actually
those
love
to
that
where
move,
if I could trade him, I would, but
but
he doesn't
nobody wants
have
that.
any value
Yeah,
for him. Like
yeah,
you'd have to find somebody that is absolutely desperate for a wide receiver and they happen to be a Commanders fan.
yeah. Not many of
Like
those
I
out there.
love Terry. I love Scary Terry. Like I've been, but for me, and I'll go back to this. He had the chance to leave as a free agent. He decided to stay and re-sign with the Commanders and take the money, take the most money he could. I would have, me personally, I'd have taken a little bit less and gone somewhere else.
Agreed.
Like he should have. So yeah, I agree. Like fantasy wise, I don't think he's startable right now. Like 8 targets, 6 receptions, okay, but 22 yards.
Yeah.
Like this is Terry McLaurin we're talking about.
I think that Jaden Daniels is the type of quarterback that could make Terry work. I think that holding on to him, keeping him on your bench, and trying to play it safe until week maybe 5 or 6, after you've seen more of their connections starting to come together. They definitely got rid of Jahan Dotson because of something. Like they didn't get much in the trade, and it's not Luke McCaffrey, and it's not De'Ami Brown, it's not Ola
Uh,
Zacharias or
uh,
whatever.
uh, z- oh my gosh.
Olamedu. Yeah,
Olamendias is,
yeah.
yeah, man, I can't believe I'm spacing on his name right now. And gosh, that's really pissing me off.
If you don't know who he is, don't worry, because I don't think that it's that
Olamide Zacchaeus. That's what it
Zacchaeus.
is. Zacchaeus.
I
Gosh, the disrespect.
I don't think that those three guys are the reason that they got rid of Jahan Dotson. I really think it's Terry. I think that they think that Terry and those guys can develop, but getting something for Jahan instead of like just dealing with him as their wide receiver too. So I don't think that picking up any of these other guys and starting them is worth it. I just think that Jaden Daniels and Brian Robinson are probably the only guys that we're even looking at starting from the Washington side. And you're definitely starting Jaden. If you picked him up as like a late round flyer as your quarterback too, and you have like a Joe Burrow right now, Joe Burrow is dealing with so much bullshit in Cincinnati. I think I'd be starting Jaden Daniels over him. Like at this point, the rushing upside is worth it for me
Yeah.
alone.
Now, staying on the Bengals side there, what's happening with Jamar Chase? Like I know they've been slowly like easing him in, I guess, because of like the off-season stuff and
So you saw
just
the
everything.
report
But
on Sunday morning saying that Jamar Chase is no longer negotiating with the Cincinnati Bengals.
yes, but like 5 targets, 4 receptions, 35 yards. Like Mike Gesicki led the team with 9 targets, seven
Yeah.
receptions, 91 yards. Now the tight ends were getting a lot of work out there. Like between the tight ends, they had 11, 14 receptions for 140 yards to the tight ends between the three of them. So like, I mean, Yoshivas, he's 2 receptions and he had the 2 touchdowns. He's not somebody that I'm looking at rostering. Like I had him on my roster, but I dropped him. And the 2 touchdowns this week's not going to make me just go ahead and add him back. It's going to make other people do it, so that's fine. You just steal somebody else. But that's my thing is like I understand the contract negotiations and stuff, but like you're still out there with your boy. Like him and Joe Burrow won the Natty at LSU together. Like I don't
Couple AFC
understand what's
championship
happening
games.
in these first 2 weeks with him and why he's just not being fed more.
Yeah, I think that honestly the team's trying to move on from him. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Jamar Chase get traded in the next month or two. If he's not going to sign with them in long term, like he's definitely not helping them win right now, and you're stuck with him. Like if you drafted him in the first round, there is no not starting him. Obviously, even if you have a Brian Thomas or something like that, the potential boom that this player has. But if T. Higgins isn't playing, I'm not excited about starting him. If T. Higgins is in, then I definitely think that you're going to see more of those 20-point games with the 10-plus targets, 100 yards, a touchdown or two. But this offense, this team, I know that they were almost able to stick it to the Chiefs, but it still doesn't really seem like they're worth investing in. Zach Moss, Chase Brown, absolutely not interested in at all. I'm so glad everyone took Chase Brown from me around before I wanted to take him, because they get to deal with what's going on in Cincinnati right now instead of me having to deal with it. Now I'm still having to deal with.
It looks like a very mediocre offense.
Exactly.
Like, if we're just being fully honest, like Joe Burrow, I mean, you know what he can give you, but it doesn't. His offensive line, for as good as the guys are that they added, it's still not looking like he's got the time he wants there. Like I said, you've got the Jamar Chase stuff. The tight ends, like Gesicki, looks like he might be rosterable and possibly startable for you if he's going to continue getting 7 to 10 targets a game. This one's to where, as a Bengals fan, you're kind of hoping for a bounce back, because if not, it could get a little bit sketchy for you. And Jamar Chase might start chirping a little bit more. Like you said, he might try to get out of there. The Bengals franchise as a whole is known for not really appeasing their players when it comes to the contract situation.
I mean, they're known as one of the shittiest franchises in sports. Like, they didn't have an
Carson
outdoor.
Palmer straight up retired because they just weren't negotiating with him.
Exactly. So, I mean, I think best case scenario is Chase gets traded. I know that sucks to hear, but if he gets traded to somewhere that already has a solid wide receiver, like, honestly, it's hard to say the Bills, but like the Bills could totally use a Jamar Chase. I don't think they want something like that after what they just dealt with Stephon Diggs. They want someone that's just gonna chill and let Josh Allen be the star.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of teams that are needing a player of Chase's caliber that are willing to just punt on next year's first round pick because they know that they're going to be in the top, 10 picks at the end of the draft. So.
Yeah, so, I mean, hey, it is what it is. We're already into week 3. The season rolls on. We appreciate you guys for hanging out with us. Subscribe down below. 500. We're giving away a jersey to one of you lucky viewers. We'd love to give away 1,000 jerseys. Just go ahead and break our bank. Tell your friends, tell your homies. TulsiRoseT.com is the sponsor. At ProFootball_pod on the Twitter machine. We love you guys. Peace out.